Okay, so this is the legacy functionality. The problem is if I take my external hard drive and I unplug it. Now, when I do that, I'm going to see over here in my folders tab that I have these small question marks saying, hey, I can't find these source files anymore. And then onto the individual image thumbnails, and also down here inside of the film strip, I see in Lightroom 5 I have a small exclamation point that says the photo is missing. Now, although the photo is missing, I could do a lot of work to this, such as those workflow steps. Maybe I'd go in and do some metadata addition, some keywording, some label colors, stars, things like that. But I couldn't go any further. If I try to go develop module or export, Lightroom would stop me. So that's legacy functionality. Now I'm going to plug that drive back in. And when I plug the drive back in and it's slowly recognized by my machine, we'll find that Lightroom reaches out and says, okay, I now have access to these images again. As we can see here, the question mark disappears and I have no more exclamation point up on the right. Full functionality. With Lightroom 5, I can build smart previews though. And a smart preview is going to be something beyond the basic preview. So to do this, there are a couple different ways. First, I could build a smart preview on import. The second way is I could go over to the library dropdown in the menu bar, come to previews, and say build smart preview. My favorite way though is coming over right here to the right tab where it says original photo. If I click, it allows me to build a smart preview for this photo. And Lightroom tells me exactly what a smart preview is. It is some type of image that is typically smaller than the original photo, but it allows me access to everything inside of Lightroom. I'm not going to go too much into the technical side here, but when you build a smart preview, what Lightroom does is it builds a lossy DNG, that lossy digital negative. So you're going to find that it's substantially smaller. It's 8-bit, and depending upon the original image, it might be, in terms of, let's call them pixels, substantially smaller. When I build a smart preview, Lightroom is going to add something new to my catalog. And to look at that, I'm going to come down and I want to look inside of the folder that contains my Lightroom catalog and examine what's there. Now, looking at this, I have two little files here. I have a lock file and a journal file, and these are only there when your Lightroom catalog is open. But right here, this is my Lightroom catalog. Lightroom 4 and legacy versions, I also always had a previews folder. That previews folder contained, well, all of my previews. With Lightroom 5, when you build a smart preview, you also have a smart previews folder. And this contains that lossy DNG representation of your original photo. So expect to see these smart previews. Now, what type of space does this take? Well, in some of our initial testing, we see that the files can be relatively small. I've seen it work such that maybe I had a 25 or a 20 some odd megabyte source file. I've seen the smart preview for that be about 2 megabytes. So it's not really tiny like a preview, but it's not as huge as your original photo. So knowing that these are here inside of the catalog now, what can we do with them? Well, you can do everything. Before I show you that everything though, I'd like you to notice that the image, when I look over underneath the histogram, it shows me that I have not only just the original photo, but also a smart preview. If you have the originals attached, so my hard drive here, my passport is still attached, Lightroom prioritizes the original photo and the smart preview just sits in the background. But if, like before, I disconnect that external hard drive, Lightroom recognizes that it's gone. I'm seeing that these photos are missing by the question marks over here. My other 3 images, they still have the little exclamation point. But this eagle image here in the upper right, as well as down in the film strip, I'm seeing that I'm in offline mode. And with offline mode, Lightroom is directing me and says, you know what? You are using your smart preview. I can take this image and do anything in my Lightroom workflow. I'm working off that 8-bit lossy DNG, but that's still good enough to go in and do anything in the develop module. I could also export or do some type of printing from this. We'll give you a report in just a little bit as we continue our print testing using print testing and exporting from these lossy DNG smart previews. These things are really cool. The benefit of the smart preview is that once I build them, the smart previews are contained with the catalog, and I no longer have to have my source files, all those original photos, attached to my machine. Good, kind of dangerous, and I'll explain the dangerous in a minute. Why is it good? Well, say I'm taking my laptop and I want to continue working on things or maybe even deliver something, some early efforts to a client, a friend, or whatever. I don't have to take my entire storage structure with me. If I build the smart preview, then I can do everything that Lightroom has to offer. The only gotcha with that, what I consider kind of dangerous, is that when I have access to everything that Lightroom has to offer, even if the images are not attached and communicating with the program, it does increase the risk of me possibly moving or deleting these images from wherever they may be on those other drives. Now, there are some nice safety processes that Lightroom will not let me delete an image that I'm working strictly in offline mode with a smart preview. That's really nice. But that doesn't stop me from going to these drives that aren't connected to Lightroom and making changes. So we have to be a little more vigilant with exactly what we're working on. Are we working on a photo that is strictly in offline mode where I'm looking at smart preview? Am I working on an image where the photo is missing? Or is it something back towards a different image where I'm working just the original? So it is a bit more complicated, but it shows us that we have access to, if we want it, a lot more options regarding what can I do if I don't have my original photos attached. So one more thing I'd like you to see, if I select multiple images, you also got to get this strange symbology right here below your histogram. And what these mean is over here on the left, the number of images that are strictly original photo. Right? The number of images that happen to have an original photo and a smart preview. Images that are strictly smart preview. And then the far right, images that are missing. So it's going to take a little while to get familiar with each of these, but once you start using the smart previews and you build them, the benefit is I can do work everything inside of Lightroom to the image if the original photo is not attached. The gotcha? Well, I'm building smart previews and they are going to take up a little more space inside of my catalog folder. So please play around with those. These might change just a little bit by the release version. I think it gives us a little bit of extra functionality, but it can be a bit more confusing. And anytime you've got more variables and more options, it's certainly possible where those little mistakes can happen. So be careful with your smart preview use initially. What I'm going to start doing as I build into my workflow, anytime I am working on an image, I'm going to go in and validate, what am I working on? Is it the original? Remember, we're going to see that right over here. Is it the smart preview or is the photo missing? As long as we keep track of that and you build a good workflow with some checks and balances, I think you're really going to like smart previews. Now, the final feature that I want to talk to in this tutorial, and I don't want to call it tutorial, but a familiarization with some of the new things in Lightroom 5. If I send an image over to the Develop module, I think what you'll find when you click onto lens corrections is that the entire interface is a little bit different. And they've moved things around, I think, to make it a bit more, just a little bit simpler to use. Okay? So I'm going to take this image and I'm going to completely reset it. And you might notice on this that we have some issues here. Now, this image was shot with a 24mm lens. I was very wide angle and I was rocking backwards, so I have some kind of distortion. Notice how these buildings are falling in towards the center, and I need to go in and make some adjustments here. The first step is to enable profile corrections, and you might see there's a big interface change here. Now, I could validate that profile just like I did before. And if I wanted to make some adjustments to this to fix this, if the profile didn't get it all done, in this case it did not, because the profile could never know that I had my lens kicked way up, I could go over to Manual and make some adjustments. Now you'll figure out as you move through this, if you're working and you like doing manual lens corrections, that there is a new slider. It's called Aspect. And this is really cool. I like to use that at the end of my manual lens corrections, and that way it just adds a little bit better aspect ratio, or adds an aspect ratio adjustment, which makes things just a little bit more realistic. Manual lens corrections, though, can be a bit intimidating for many users. So inside of Lightroom 5, there is an upgrade, and it's called Upright. And what Upright is at its most basic level, it's automatic lens corrections. We can go in and it will take care of any type of leveling, as well as vertical, horizontal distortions, all sorts of great stuff. To use this, all we need to do is first enable profile correction, which makes it work better. You can do it without, but you won't get as good of results. And then you can come down and make a selection from either auto, which is a fully automatic lens correction. I could just level. I could just deal with vertical perspective corrections, or full. This gives me access to the full power of upright. Okay. Now, to demonstrate how this works, I'm going to click on auto. Upright analyzes the image and makes the correction. Notice, oh, by the way, that if I take a look at the crop overlay, it gave me the best crop here to make it happen. Okay. So I'll hit close. I'm going to turn this off, and it will disable what we had there. If I want to see a level or vertical, I would use either of those. And in most cases, let's try just vertical, see if it fixes. Okay. Now, it made that fix. I'm seeing white area here because the fix, it couldn't make the crop happen with what I had originally set. So I could go in and constrain the crop, and now it fixes it for me, although I lose certain parts of the image. I'll reset this back to where it was before. Another option, if you really need the full power of upright, go to the full tab. And that's going to do its best to give you the full adjustments to take care of everything that it found. Now, in use so far, I found that it does a pretty good job. If you're looking for quick automatic adjustments, this does it. My favorite tab so far is the Auto tab. I think that gives me the best results. The cool thing about it is, although this is automatic, once I get it done, I can always go in afterwards and make manual adjustments to what was done automatically through Upright. I do want to show you one place, though, where this seems like it should work really easily, but it doesn't. And I think you'll find this to be the case for most of yours as well. So here's an image that a Victoria shot of me. I was walking with the girls out towards the beach, and we were trying to drain the Pacific Ocean at the time to get a little more beach space with the horizon dropping down to the left. You'd think that, I could come in here real easily. Instead of going to my crop overlay and using level, I'll just enable my profile corrections and then hit auto, and it should take care of this for me. And Upright tells me there was no correction found. I said, okay, well, let's turn that off. How about level? Because really what I really need to do is level that horizon. And there was no correction found. So although Upright does a great job, there are some images that it's just not going to affect. If it doesn't, that's okay. I can't use the automatic functionality, but I can still go in and do things manually. Whether it's working manual lens corrections, or in this case, it might be simpler just coming up to the crop overlay, grabbing angle, and straightening the horizon with this option instead. But I think you'll find the more you play around with the automatic lens corrections in Upright, the more you're going to like them. So that was maybe a not so quick look at my 6 favorite features inside of Lightroom 5. There's a lot of other little cool upgrades that are in here. You can take a look at the Adobe list. I'll also put some of those up on the blog. But once again, for me, my top 6, awesome spot removal, the new radial filter, better functionality in my crop overlay, getting rid of that whole previous import selection upon import, smart previews, and Upright. Once again, this is Hal from LIGHT Photographic Workshops. A little bit longer than I intended, but I hope you like that. And get out, play with Lightroom 5. Please let me know what you think. Hal@lightworkshops.com.